All right, guys, here we go. Chapter 11. Remember the drill. 5 to 7 sentences, complete, correct capitalization, spelling, punctuation. Don't forget. Chapter 11. Nick wasn't sure if sneaking into Mrs. Starch's house was the bravest thing he'd ever done, or the dumbest. But he felt certain that the world's meanest biology teacher wasn't really absent from school because of a family crisis. Nothing else had happened. Something serious? And Dwayne Scrod had to be involved. What if she croaked? Marta whispered as she closed the door behind her. What if we find her body? That same awful thought had occurred to Nick, although he didn't say it aloud. Then the cops will find her. Then the cops will think we did it. We'll spend the rest of our lives in prison, Marta said. Keep it down, okay? This is the darkest place I've ever been. Give me your hand. I've only got one, Nick reminded her, so you carry the flashlight. It had been a long while since he'd held hands with a girl. 5th grade, Jessie Cronenberg. The following summer, her family had moved to Alabama, and Nick hadn't heard from her since. Where do you think the old witch keeps all of her snakes? Marta asked, squeezing his fingers. That's just another lame rumor. Maybe it's the true rumor. Maybe she whacked her husband too. They say he disappeared like 20 years ago. Nick and Marta hadn't moved 3 steps since coming through the door. I'm totally skeeched out, she said. I know, you're crushing my knuckles. Nick pulled free of her grasp and took back the flashlight. The moment he turned it on, he saw that at least one of the many crazy stories about Mrs. Starch was true. The house was filled with stuffed animals, and not the soft, huggable type that they found in toy stores. Marta said, We are out of here. Hold on. It's like a zoo of the dead. Nick, too, had never imagined such a scene. A herd of taxidermied creatures displayed in wild disorder from wall to wall and from floor to the rafters. There were birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians of many sizes, suspended in poses of coiling, leaping, lurking, snarling, soaring, and pouncing. The animals stared with blank glass eyes through Nick and Marta into infinity. I told you she was psycho, Marta whispered. Nick played the beam of the flashlight across the lifeless menagerie. Every mount was displayed by a handwritten tag. I think I know what she's done, Nick said. Besides losing her marbles? Nick approached a tawny, spotted cat the size of a golden retriever. Beside it was a small, mottled bird, perched sprightly on a stick of driftwood. Mounted overhead on the wall was a homely brown fish with armored ridges. Nick checked the tags on each of them. They're all endangered species, he told Marta. That's a panther cub. That's a Cape Sable seaside sparrow. And that ugly thing up on the wall is a short-nosed sturgeon. I know they're endangered because Mrs. Starch has a list in her class syllabus. You actually read her syllabus? Are you what, the king of geeks? She said it would be on the final. Whatever, Nick. We got to get back to the mall before... Look here. He fixed the light on a short-eared brown bunny. A lower keys marsh rabbit. And there, he said, pointing to a stubby-legged lump the size of a hockey puck, is a baby leatherback turtle. And this little guy is... Rat, Marta interrupted irritably. A nasty, smelly rat. Wrong, Nick pronounced the name slowly from the name tag. It's a Choctawhatchee beach mouse. That was my next guess, she said dryly. Hey, here's one with a collar, Nick grinned as he read it aloud. Chelsea Everett. Must be somebody special. Marta looked around uneasily. This place is too freaky. Nick approached the weather-beaten old steamer trunk. The lid was so bulky and warped that he was unable to raise it one-handed. Help me out, he told Marta. No way. What if that's where she stuffed Mr. March's body? Quit whining. Together they prized open the antique chest, which, to Marta's relief, was empty. She crinkled her nose. Smells like my grandpa's attic. A car door slammed shut. Nick instantly clicked off the flashlight. Get down, he said, tugging Marta to the floor. The glow from the car's headlights lit the edges of the window shades. Nick and Marta heard someone clomping up to the steps, making no effort to be stealthy. The next noise was the rattle of a doorknob. We're so busted, Marta groaned. Nick motioned toward the open trunk. After you. Nope, not happening. Get in. They clambered inside and pulled the top shut. The only sound was the thump of footsteps on the pine floor, and the footsteps were not dainty. It could have been Mrs. Starch, who wasn't a dainty woman, or it could have been Smoke. Or possibly some other sizable person. I can't breathe, Martha wrenchedly said. Yes, you can. Turn on the flashlight, Nick, or I'm going to scream. Don't tell me you're claustrophobic. Big time. Nick said, oh, that's great. He, too, had a fear of confined spaces. The flashlight wouldn't come on until he jiggled the batteries. Is that better? He asked. Marta was as pale as wax and drenched with sweat. She looked terrible. The steamer trunk was barely wide enough for the two of them to wedge side by side, sitting with their knees against their chins. For Nick, the cramped fit was as painful as it was unnerving. His taped up arm was pinned at an unnatural angle against his shoulder blade. He felt like a hawk with a broken wing. Still, he was more concerned with Marta. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry, he whispered. She shut her eyes and took a deep labored breath. You'll really be sorry if I hurl all over both of us. Ew. The person who entered the house was moving around, opening cabinets and cupboards. Gradually, the sound of the footsteps came closer, making the planks shudder beneath the trunk. Nick wished he'd listened to Marta when she told him to remove the ace bandage. It would have been helpful to have two good hands available if needed. He was furious at himself for taking such a foolish risk by entering Mrs. Starch's house. The last thing his mother needed right now was a phone call from the police, or worse, the hospital. And how would she break the bad news to his father? As the footfalls got heavier, Marta's eyes popped open. Can he see the light from this thing? I doubt it, Nick said. The side of the old chest appeared solid and seamless. Better turn it off, just in case. You won't zap out? Nope. Nick clicked the flashlight off. He could see Marta trembling at his side. In the smoldering blackness, he reached out and found one of her hands. She squeezed back fiercely. Oh my goodness, I can't even read today. By now, they could hear the cadence of human breathing outside the steamer trunk. Whoever was in the house, man or woman, was standing only a few feet away. Time seemed to stop dead. Nick felt trapped in his own skin, helpless and on the brink of panic. Taking care of Marta was the only thing that kept him steady. She was in worse shape than he was. His escape strategy was simple because he was short on options. If they were discovered inside the truck, Nick planned to spring straight upward, shrieking like a lunatic Jack in the Box. The idea was to scare the pee out of the person in the room in the hope that he or she would either run away or have a stroke, at which point Nick and Marta could bolt safely out the back door. Nick figured that the shock tactic had a 50-50 chance of working on Mrs. Starch, who wouldn't be expecting nocturnal intruders. He wasn't so sure about Smoke. It was hard to picture the kid being afraid of anything, except possibly a SWAT team. Marta's hand went limp and clammy. Nick gave it a little pinch, but she didn't respond. In the pitch darkness of the steam chest, he groped frantically for her face to make sure she was still breathing. "Watch it," she burst out. Your stupid thumb went up my nose." "Not so loud." But it was too late. There was a heavy thud and the trunk moved. "Come out of here," a male voice commanded. Nick and Marta were too frightened to respond. They felt another hard jolt. The guy was kicking the side of the wooden chest. So much for the element of surprise, Nick thought. Marta poked him sharply, as if to say, "Do something." Nick shifted his weight to his heels and prepared to launch himself against the bulky lid. At that moment, the trunk went over backwards and the top flew open, spilling him and Marta into a tangled, terrified heap. Standing over them was a man who had overturned the chest. "Get up," he snapped. Nick rose first and helped Marta to her feet. He noticed that they'd landed on the mount of an endangered wood stork, snapping its long, spindly legs so that it was now the same height as a duck. Hang on. I need a sip of my solo. The stranger carried a flashlight of his own, which he aimed harshly into their eyes. "This must be your first burglary," he said, "because you stink at it." "We didn't come to steal anything, that's the truth," Nick blurted. He couldn't see the face behind the flashlight, but the voice didn't sound like Dwayne Scott Jr. "Let's go for a ride," the man said. "No, wait," cried Marta. "We're looking for our teacher, that's all." "Move it." They exited through the back door, the stranger prodding them from behind. Outside, there was enough starlight to see that the man was shirtless and wore scuffed trousers and muddy hiking boots. A black ski mask covered his hair, forehead, and eyes. He stood about the same height as Smoke, although he was leaner and more muscular. Nick didn't even consider trying to get away because Marta was still so wobbly that she couldn't even possibly have outrun the stranger. Mrs. Starch's blue Prius was parked next to the house. "Hop in the back seat," the man told them. Marta froze on the spot. "No way." "Just let us go," Nick pleaded. "We won't tell the police." The man chuckled dryly. I'm the one who ought to be calling the police. Now, you two either get in the car or be thrown in the car. It's your choice. Reluctantly, Nick and Marta got in. The stranger whipped the Prius around and drove down the trail to Buzzards Boulevard. He didn't bother switching on the headlights. What you do with Mrs. Starch? Nick heard himself ask. The man eyed him in the rearview mirror. The question is, what am I going to do with you? Marta reached over and slugged Nick's leg. My name's Twilly, the man said, a sure sign, or so Marta believed, that he intended to murder them and dump their bodies in a drainage canal. Otherwise, why would he be so casually identifying himself and risk being turned into the authorities? I'm Nick Waters, said Nick. My friend's name's Marta. What happened to your arm, son? Nick was pretty sure that the man named Tully wouldn't believe the truth, that Nick was trained to be a lefty. And in any case, Nick didn't feel like getting into a detailed discussion about his father's war injuries. Lacrosse, he said. I sprained it in a lacrosse practice. The man said. Marta interjected. Seriously, I was there when it happened. Whatever you say. Where are you taking us? Nick asked. Depends. My mom's meeting us at the mall, Marta said. If we're not there, she'll go nuts. I swear to God, she'll call the White House. The stranger named Tilly said, I wish I'd had a mom like that. Nick decided that because he was the one who'd gotten them into this awful mess, it was his duty to get them out. And since he couldn't very well overpower the guy and hijack the car, the next best option was to talk some sense into him. Mister, you don't want to go to jail for kidnapping. No, and I don't intend to, the man said evenly. Honest, if you just let us go, we won't narc you out. So, Mrs. Starch is your teacher? Marta spoke up. We're in her biology class. And you adore her so much that you busted into her house just to make sure she was all right? That's your story? The man named Twilly was smiling behind the wheel. Not exactly, Nick said. We didn't break in. There was a key on the porch. Ah. What are you doing there? Nick said, not expecting to receive a straight answer. Looking for some powdered cocoa, the man replied, flicking on the headlights. And a book. Ever heard of a writer named Edward Abbey? Nick and Marta admitted they hadn't. No surprise, the stranger said. I'm sure they don't teach his stuff in an uptight private school as yours. Ed was sort of a bomb thrower. Only the bombs were ideals and principles. Sorry, guys, my dog is right here. He liked the earth more than he liked most humans. A Hannah Montana ringtone went off, and Marta sheepishly smothered her phone. That's got to be my mom. She's supposed to pick us up outside the movie theater. Answer it, the stranger said. Tell her you'll be right on time. And if you say anything else, I'm turning this car around and we're going to Miami or maybe Key Largo. Marta did as she was told. After hanging up, she said, 10:30 sharp. She'll freak if we're not there. Understood, the man named Tilly said. Nick was relieved to see that the car was heading in the direction of the mall, which raised the welcome possibility that they weren't actually being kidnapped. How do you know, Mrs. Starch? He asked the stranger. None of your business, Nick Waters. The man tugged the ski cap tighter on his head. We're worried about her, that's all. Nobody's seen her in like a week, Marta said. Yeah? Then take out your cute little pink phone again, Princess, and dial the number 555-2346. Marta switched on her cell phone, switched on her cell phone speaker so both she and Nick could hear the recording. Hello, people. I'll be away from the school indefinitely because of an unexpected family matter. You may leave a message at the tone, though it might be a while before I have time to reply. Please accept my apologies in advance. Now, here's the beat. That's her, Nick said. Definitely, Marta agreed. Did she sound the least bit dead to you? The man named Twilly asked. Gravely ill? Mortally injured? Not really. Then quit worrying, he snapped, and quit nosing around places you don't belong. He pulled over a block from the mall, in front of a seedy pawn shop. He stepped out of the Prius and ordered Nick and Marta to do the same. Standing in the glow of a gaudy neon sign, the man looked to be in his late 30s with an athletic build and reminded Nick of his father. The stranger said, It would be best if I never set eyes on the two of you again. Oh, don't worry, Marta assured him. Nick was staring at Twilly's belt, which was made of tanned cowhide and stitched with a row of small sleeves designed to hold bullets. It looked very much like the one worn by the mysterious figure in Nick's video from the field trip to Blackvine Swamp. The man tapped his face on the wristwatch. You've got 6 minutes and 30 seconds before your mama shows up. Get a move on. Thank you, Marta said with a grateful sigh. Thank you. For what? For not killing us and tossing our bodies into a ditch. You're welcome, said the man named Tilly. I'll tell Aunt Bunny you asked about her. Nick rocked back on his heels. Mrs. Starch is your aunt? With a thumb, the stranger propped 2 shiny bullets out of his ammo belt. He began tossing them from hand to hand like jelly beans. I hate repeating myself, he said. Nick and Marta started running. They didn't stop until they reached the mall. There you go.